Hello, fellow gypsies and spiritual wanderers. This is Mocha Gypsy, and today we're going to do a book reading from 2 chapters of my book, Seeking Asylum in Costa Rica, a domestic violence survivor's guide to protecting yourself and your children when the system fails. Some of you may or may not already know, my daughter and I, we live in Costa Rica. We're Americans who have sought asylum and was granted asylum in Costa Rica as victims of gender-based violence, i.e. Domestic violence. And we've been living here for 4 years, living very peacefully and protected by the Costa Rican government. So what I'm going to do right now is get right into it and read 2 chapters from my book. And the reason why I wrote this book, guys, is because I want to help other women do this too, if needed, if they exhausted all of their options, because it's a myth that that the American family court system favors mothers by default. Actually, it's quite the opposite in many cases, where mothers who try to protect their children from an abusive ex-spouse, they find that they can't do it because parental rights usually supersedes the child's safety in a lot of cases. So we get a lot of stories in the news and definitely on social media, even more on social media, of mothers and children getting unalived after the divorce, children going to visit the other parent who has a history of abuse by court order, and they don't come back home because they've been unalived. A lot of horror stories, or not, it doesn't even have to be that extreme. Also, children who continue to get abused, physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused, and mothers feel helpless. You know, they go back to court trying to get full custody, and may even end up losing custody because the way the court system and the family court system is set up, women who actually try to petition for full custody, claiming that the other parent is abusive, statistics show that they're actually more likely to lose their children in those cases. You know, so I didn't want to be a statistic. So after I exhausted all of my options, I made the decision to take my child overseas for both of our safeties, but especially my child's safety. And I will cover that in the first chapter of my book that shares my story, what had us be here. What I did not mention in the book, I have used magic to, keep trouble at bay with my ex, but this book is valuable to anyone who doesn't use spiritual means to solve their problem. And also I'd also like to say that this book is not only for mothers, it's for anyone who feels that they're not safe in their own country, especially like women who may or may not be mothers, who may find themselves in a stalker situation, a crazy ex-boyfriend, or some random stranger who is continuously harassing them and threatening their lives. This book would be useful to you as well. I'm just adding the mother aspect because, of course, that's my experience. And of course, when you have children, that's a more complicated issue legally and logistics wise. So anyhow, guys, I'm going to get right into it. Thank you for joining my live stream today, and also those of you who will be joining us later in the replay. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments, and I will gladly answer them for you. So, okay, and that's my cover. So let's get right into this. And, just a trigger warning for anyone who's sensitive to, it's not really that bad, but I just felt the need to just add that. All right. And after each chapter, I'll answer any questions that may come up in the chat. And those of you watching the replay, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have in the comments. Okay. My story. Not all dreams start off as nightmares. When I met DT, it felt like everything that I have ever longed for was finally falling into place. At the time, I was a full-time solo RVer, traveling across the country and savoring the freedom of the open road. But behind the adventures, I yearned for something more, a sense of stability, and the kind of family life I had never truly experienced growing up. I wasn't close to my family, and perhaps that made me even more eager to create a strong, loving family of my own. DT seemed like everything I was searching for. He was handsome, intelligent, spiritual, military background, and had his life in order, rare qualities in the men I had met. He had a well-paying blue-collar job, a house of his own, and unlike most, he was ready for commitment. We shared a vision of an independent, self-sufficient lifestyle, growing and raising our own food, and embracing the traditional values of hard work and family. On paper, it was perfect. We moved into a relationship quickly, and it was easy to believe this was the life I was meant to have. 2 years later, we got married. Even though my reservations had started to grow, there were more and more bad days mixed in with the good, and than I wanted to admit. But DT's promises always made me hopeful that things would improve. And so I chose to believe in the future we had imagined together until the reality of our life became impossible to ignore. In the final months of my pregnancy, life turned into a nightmare I never expected. I was 8 months pregnant when the father of my child, DT, hammer-fisted me in the face during an argument. Blood poured from my nose and mouth as I was rushed to the hospital. The pain of that night was something I will never forget. But what made it worse was the disbelief and betrayal by the system that followed. Despite the obvious evidence of my injuries, the police chose to believe DT's version of the story. He was not arrested, leaving me to cope with both the physical trauma and emotional devastation of knowing that the law would not protect me. It's difficult to explain the depth of fear and isolation I felt in those moments. The person who was supposed to protect and care for me was the one inflicting harm, and the system I believed would offer protection turned a blind eye. As a Black woman far from my home in the state of Connecticut, living in the small, tight-knit town in Wyoming, the odds were stacked against me from the beginning. DT was later clinically diagnosed as a narcissist and was possibly even a sociopath, with a chilling ability to manipulate those around him. I fell right into his trap. Just a few months after the assault, he set up a situation that would cost me nearly everything. One night, while our newborn daughter, Eloise, was sleeping in our bed, we got into a heated argument. In an attempt to defend myself, I pointed an unloaded gun at him, hoping it would de-escalate the situation. But DT was already prepared. He recorded our fight, twisting my act of desperation into something sinister, and called the authorities the next day. I was arrested and charged with a misdemeanor. DT called the Department of Family Services, DFS, or CPS for some, and lied, twisting the meaning of my words after our argument and claiming that I was suicidal. The authorities took him at his word, and within days, our 6-week-old daughter was placed into foster care. It felt as though my heart had been ripped out of my chest. DT's plans to destroy my life with the help of the system were all well underway. But the one snag in his plan was that he was also filed as a defendant in our DFS case for getting into a fight with me, which later proved to serve me and our daughter. I was thrust into an overwhelming legal battle with no job, no income, and no support system. I found myself fighting on 3 different legal fronts: a criminal case, a divorce case, and a DFS case. DT had filed for divorce and was seeking full custody of our infant, Eloise. I remember telling DT just 2 days before our fight that my worst fear was having our child taken away and placed into foster care. Knowing the kinds of abuse that often happens to children in the system. At the time, DT pretended to sympathize, but he took that fear and weaponized it. What he did wasn't about what was best for our daughter. It was about hurting and controlling me, and the system played right into his hands. Fortunately, with the help of good friends, I quickly found an apartment and landed a good-paying job as a graphic designer. Despite meeting all of DFS's requirements within just 4 months and being assessed as a very low risk to my daughter's safety from the outset, Eloise remained in foster care for nearly 10 months. Every time I expressed how desperately I wanted my child back during this critical stage in her development, they brushed me off without clear explanations. It became painfully obvious that the social worker, the guardian ad litem, GAL, and the deputy prosecutor, who are friends with each other, were determined to keep Eloise from me for DT's benefit. DT's house was in a constant state of disrepair due to a list of unfinished renovations. With exposed floors and unfinished walls, nowhere near the standards required by DFS. Yet, the system seemed content to stall the reunification process as if to give him time to catch up, to be in a better position to get full custody he requested in our divorce proceedings. Another peculiar thing is that the social worker was his neighbor and lived right across the street from him. She had a history of abusing her power with other mothers and getting away with it. She and her colleagues ignored DT's lack of effort to follow their recommendations for services to get our daughter out of foster care. His history of abuse towards me and his serious psychological diagnoses revealed in the mental health evaluations we were both ordered to undergo. My evaluation came back clean. Interestingly, after DT's evaluation, the psychiatrist not only diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder, but also referred him to another state-appointed psychiatrist to assess the possibility of pedophilia. I've had my suspicions about that as well. The Gall's own disturbing background added to my despair. She was married to a convicted sex offender imprisoned for possession of child pornography and remained married to him even though they had young children. Yet, she held the power to decide my child's future. This was the woman, alongside the social worker and prosecutor, who pushed for DT to have unsupervised visitation, dismissing his violent tendencies and assessed lack of parenting skills. It became evident that their goal wasn't to protect my daughter, it was to punish me. And I felt like I was living in the Twilight Zone. Despite everything, I kept fighting. The graphic design job I secured paid $45,000 a year, a decent salary in Wyoming, allowed me to work from home with a very flexible schedule so I could take care of Eloise full time once she was returned to me. I complied with every demand the system placed on me and more. I completed mental health evaluations, attended therapy, participated in Head Start, completed anger management classes, showed up for every DFS meeting and appointment, and even served on a parental advisory board. But none of my progress was ever acknowledged. The goalposts just kept moving. Each time I completed one requirement, they simply added another. At every hearing, the judge ignored the substantial evidence proving my fitness as a mother, choosing instead to follow the recommendations of the social worker and her work friends, who sat across the courtroom at their own Mean Girls table, wielding the same social power and intimidation as high school bullies. It became clear that the system wasn't designed to reunite me with my child. It was designed to keep me down. In the end, the social worker and her cronies recommended that DT be granted 50% custody of our daughter. This was a damaging blow, as this recommendation would carry weight in my divorce case. Moreover, they deliberately closed our DFS case before receiving the results of DT's psychosexual evaluation by the second psychiatrist, which later revealed troubling findings. His ABLE assessment, which measures the probability of inappropriate sexual behavior and abuse, returned a high-risk probability score of 86%. By the time these results finally came in, our divorce had been finalized. However, I ensured that our divorce decree included a stipulation to renegotiate custody for the safety of our child, pending his evaluation report, which gave me some comfort. That sense of security would soon be short-lived. When I tried to use this report to petition the court for full custody, my divorce lawyer advised against it. He warned that even with the damning evidence, I could lose custody entirely if I pursued it and was accused of parental alienation. The corrupt legal system intertwined with its small town good old boy and good old girl network was stacked against me. My lawyer, part of that same network, understood all too well how things worked in that county. He knew that bringing in expert witnesses like the doctors who performed DT's evaluations could backfire horribly, especially since he was never convicted of any sexual assaults against a minor. The judges and the system had already shown me they weren't interested in the truth or the safety of my child, and I felt hopeless. I had fought so hard and endured so much to finally have Eloise returned from the foster system, only to lose precious time with her that I can never get back. And now I was forced to hand her over each week to a man who was a monster, with nothing but my prayers to protect her. It was at that point that I realized I needed to explore options outside the system to keep my child safe. My decision to seek asylum in another country was solidified when Eloise, only 3 at the time, returned from a visit with DT, covered in bruises and scratches on her back. I texted him, demanding an explanation, but he ignored me. When I asked Eloise what had happened, she fell silent, too scared to answer. The next day, she admitted that her father had hit her. I took her straight to the emergency room to document her injuries and filed a police report, believing they would finally act. But the police refused to arrest him, saying there wasn't enough evidence. When I spoke to my lawyer about pursuing full custody over this, he told me the bruises weren't serious enough grounds, that Eloise would have to be seriously injured and hospitalized before the courts would consider removing her from her father's custody. This crushed me. I couldn't believe that my daughter's safety and well-being were so casually dismissed by those who were supposed to protect her. I lived in constant fear of her being harmed again and worse. I was doing my best to make a plan to leave the country and save up funds, but it felt like I was playing a cruel game of beat the clock. A few months later, DT crossed another line. Although he was barred from the domestic violence shelter, a small house in the center of town that I rented from the local DV advocacy group, he came to our door, pounding loudly and terrifying us both. When I looked out the window, I saw his gun holstered visibly at his side, a chilling reminder of the lengths he would go to assert control. I called the police, hoping that this blatant act of intimidation would prompt them to take action. Instead, they issued him only a warning. Staying in the U.S. any longer would expose Eloise and me to escalating violence without real protection from law enforcement. I truly had no choice but to leave everything behind and seek refuge where I could finally keep my daughter safe and start rebuilding our lives in peace. Every day, I am grateful for our strength and guidance that brought me here, and for the chance to live our lives without fear. Costa Rica has become a place of healing, where my daughter and I can finally breathe, laugh, and grow. The road that led us here was painful and unjust, but it forged an unbreakable resilience in me. I now see that my survival wasn't just for us. It was a call of help to help others escape the chains of corrupt systems that seek to silence and oppress. My story isn't just about finding safety. It's about reclaiming our right to live in peace and pursue happiness, free from the shadows of our past. And while my journey may seem extreme, you don't need a story like mine to seek a new beginning. Asylum offers a path to safety for anyone facing prosecution, oppression, or serious harm. And Costa Rica provides a genuine opportunity for refuge and a life reclaimed. In sharing this journey, I hope to inspire others to find their courage, to break free, and to create new lives filled with hope. Okay, so guys, that was my opening chapter, explaining my story. And I'll just take a short break just to see if there's any questions to come in. I'm very, very grateful to be here every day. Every day I wake up and I'm thankful that not only that we're safe, that my daughter's safe, but I get to be with her every day and knowing that she's protected. Because the pressure, the threat of violence that we lived under, and the threat of the system itself in that small town we lived in, it was ridiculous. It was like every day it was like the making of a Lifetime movie, you know? And I'm thankful for being here. And an added perk of living here in Costa Rica is that the culture is very compatible with us. You know, it's a very, what I would call a feminine culture, where it's a very pro mother and child. Children can actually be children here. If a child was to get to have a temper tantrum, no one really gets annoyed. They actually encourage the children to have their emotions out. I mean, it's a very loving culture towards children and mothers, you know. But anyhow, I'm going to, oh, we got someone coming in here. Okay, first I want to, I guess that means congratulate Mocha Gypsy. Were you able to get full custody? In the United States, no. That was a big part of the problem. 50-50, we had 50-50 custody. Well, roughly, I had like 60. He had 40% custody because he had to pay me child support. And I wanted full custody and have him have supervised visitations because he's a dangerous person, and I didn't get that. Here in Costa Rica, I have 100% physical custody. He still has 50% legal custody, but I'm in the works of making that happen, you know. So then thank you for saying hello, Fly by Night. Much appreciated. Okay, so let's see here. I'm going to get into the next chapter, the second chapter that I'm going to read. And that'll be chapter 6, which is basically very logistical and practical about getting your ducks in a row. Okay, it's called Getting Your Ducks in a Row, Preparing to Leave Safely with Your Children. Now, it's a very large chapter, probably the largest in my book. My book is 144 pages. Okay, so this is like a real book. All right, full of, I put all the information that I believe that a woman would need, a woman with or without children would need. Okay. What I feel would be the most useful and helpful for anyone seeking this path. Okay. But since it's so large, I'm only going to read the essentials that I think you need, the soft essentials, and then read through the passport issue, getting a passport for yourself and your children, because I find that the passport issue is a biggie. Okay. So for even those who don't, end up getting the book, that at least this will have some value to them. Okay. So chapter 6, I'm going to get right into it. And again, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, and I'll get to you when I can. So chapter 6, Getting Your Ducks in a Row, Preparing to leave safely with your children. All right. So you've made the decision to seek asylum in Costa Rica. It's a big step, but you're not alone. Here's what you'll need to gather and consider as you prepare for this life-changing move. Have bravery. First and foremost, you'll need bravery. There's no sugarcoating it. Making the choice to seek asylum, especially with your children, carries significant risks. Legally, financially, and socially, you may face uncertainty, unexpected challenges, and moments that test your resolve. But here's the question you need to ask yourself. Does the fear of what could happen if you stay outweigh the risks of leaving? The fear of losing your life, your freedom, or your children's future should be greater than the fear of leaving everything familiar behind. If it isn't, you may need to explore more conservative options for your situation. Seeking asylum is not for everyone, and there is no shame in deciding to stay and fight differently. It's about finding a path that aligns with your values and your situation. Only you can decide if this journey is right for you, and it requires a strong heart, unwavering courage, and an ability to face the unknown without guarantees. Bravery isn't about being fearless. It's about facing your fears and acting anyway, knowing there will be sacrifices and tough days ahead. Bravery doesn't mean that you won't have moments of doubt or fear. It means that you keep moving forward anyway for yourself and for your children. It's knowing that the life you envision, one free of violence, intimidation, and oppression, is worth the struggle it takes to get there. Remember, bravery is not about being fearless. It's about valuing your future and your children's future enough to take action despite your fears. It's about envisioning the kind of life you want for your family and understanding that your courage today could pave the way for a better tomorrow. Even if the journey feels overwhelming at times, remember that each step you take is a testament to your strength and determination. Trust in your ability to adapt and overcome, and know that every act of bravery, no matter how small, brings you closer to freedom and safety. Move in silence. This cannot be stressed enough. Move in silence. For your protection and the protection of your children, keep your intentions to yourself. When planning to seek asylum, do not share your plans with anyone, even those you trust. Every person you tell increases the risk that your plans will reach the wrong ears, whether through intentional betrayal, careless conversation, or pressure from authorities. The consequences can affect not just you, but also anyone who becomes involved. By keeping your plans private, you protect both yourself and those who care about you. Remember, if someone close to you knows about your intentions and does not report them, they could later face serious legal repercussions, especially if they assist you in any way. The legal system is designed to prevent people from evading its reach, and it can be relentless in pursuing anyone who helps. By moving in silence, you protect not only your own freedom, but also the safety and well-being of anyone who might otherwise be implicated. Silence also gives you control over your situation. The fewer people who know about your plans, the fewer opportunities exist for things to unravel. Well-meaning friends and family can sometimes unintentionally cause more harm than good, introducing doubt, fear, or compromising your resolve. Everyone has their own perspective, shaped by their experiences, and what might seem to be a rational concern to them could create unnecessary stress and confusion for you. You need clarity and focus, which means relying on your own instincts and careful planning, without the noise of others' fears and doubts. Moreover, not everyone who appears supportive will have your best interests at heart. Some people might, without even realize it, sabotage your efforts, whether due to jealousy, fear, or an inability to understand the risks you face. Even those who love you may try to dissuade you out of fear for your safety. Protecting your plan means protecting yourself from these well-intentioned but potentially damaging influences. Another reason to move in silence is to minimize your digital footprint. In today's world, information is easily shared and tracked, whether through texts, social media, or even casual conversations online. A simple slip-up can leave a trail that could lead back to you, potentially compromising your entire plan. Be deliberate in your actions and communications. Discretion is your ally in this journey. It requires you to practice discipline, avoiding indirect hints or anything that could expose your intentions prematurely. Instead of seeking validation or support from others, look inward and cultivate your own strength. There will be a time to share your story, to celebrate your resilience, but only when you are safe and your journey is complete. Until that time comes, every action must be intentional. Every word must be carefully considered. Your silence is your strength, and it will be the shield that protects your vision, your children, and everyone who matters to you. All right. So, yeah. So, um, this is, the soft essentials, that you need to actually get in there, and that's the essentials of the mind, your mindset, and how you plan to carry out your plans. So, before I get into the passport logistics of things, I'd like to see if we have any more comments. Let's see here. Okay, I'm glad you and your daughter are safe. Thank you, Fly by Night. Yeah, I'm very thankful of it. I hate to think about if things were different and we're still living in that town 4 years after the fact, where we would be right now. Um, you know, I know for sure the answer would be not in a good place. So, anyhow, let me get to the logistics of getting a passport. That's a different subsection in this chapter. And there we go. All right. All right. So getting a passport is extremely important. And if you don't have one, if you're thinking of taking this path and you don't currently have passports for your children, work on that process now. Just because you just don't know when the government offices could be backed up, where there could be delays. It's better to have it as soon and as early as you can. As I mentioned, getting your passport is the biggest hurdle for most women, because either they don't have permission from the other parent to get a passport, even though some people go a roundabout way of doing that, but that's that's not really something to be discussed publicly. But yeah, it's a big hurdle, and there are legal channels to get that passport if you have the patience and willing to possibly pay for a lawyer to help you do so. Because remember, judges are basically the lords and kings of your district. So if you take your ex to court and you can make a good case for getting that passport, it can happen. There are ways to do it legally. There's also ways to do it not legally, but we're just talking about the legal ways here. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in this chapter here, in this subchapter. All right. Apply for you and your children's passports if you don't have them. Obtaining passports for yourself and your children is a critical step for international travel or seeking asylum. However, it's important to be aware that in the US, the Children's Passport Issuance Alert Program, CPIAP, and similar systems in the UK may notify your ex-spouse or co-parent if they're registered and you apply for a passport for your child. If this could prevent challenges, I recommend consulting a lawyer to explore your options and ensure the process remains as discreet as possible. Okay, so I'm going to just take a little quick break here. So what that means is, okay, this CPIAP, the Children's Passport Issuance Alert Program, all right? If your ex or co-parent registered for this program, that means that you can't just apply for a passport for your children secretly from them, they will be alerted. They will be alerted that you applied for the passport. They can't, if you legally are in the position to apply for a passport for your children, that's another separate thing altogether. Whether or not that's the case, they're going to be notified by that, usually by email, by email. So just know. So if your ex or whoever, is a type that crosses their I's and crosses their T's and dot their I's, that there's a chance that they could have registered for something like this. So just to know that. Okay, so step 1, gather required documents. To apply for U.S. passports, you need to gather the following documents. Completed DS-11 form. Each applicant, including children, must complete a DS-11 passport application form. This form is available online or at passport acceptance facilities. The most common is like your local post office, okay? Proof of U.S. citizenship. For adults, this could be a certified birth certificate, previous passport, naturalization certificate, or certificate of citizenship. For children, a certified birth certificate is required as proof of citizenship. Parental identification. Both parents or legal guardians need to provide valid government-issued IDs, such as a driver's license, state ID, or passport. Passport photos. Each applicant needs a recent passport photo that meets U.S. passport standards. Infants and children need their own photo, which can be taken at passport photo locations or some acceptance facilities. Step 2, parental consent for children's passports. Okay. If both parents are listed on the child's birth certificate, both must consent to the child's passport application. Here are ways to proceed. In-person consent. Ideally, both parents should accompany the child to the passport acceptance facility to provide consent by signing the DS-11 form in person. One parent unavailable. If one parent cannot be present, the absent parent must complete and notarize form DS-3053, which is a statement of consent. This notarized form must be submitted with a copy of the absent parent's ID. Some mothers have found ways to get around this, but they carry serious legal risks. Just taking a quick break here. I had my ex sign this form, knowing that I couldn't trust the system, and Costa Rica was like my plan B. I asked, as a part of our divorce mediation settlement, to have a passport for Eloise. And, so that became a part of the divorce decree for him to actually sign off on this very form, which he did. He had it notarized and everything. And all I had to do was mail it in with our application. And that was that, So for some of you who are going in the middle of a divorce or, a separation or whatever, try to get that to be part of your divorce settlement. Say that you want to be able to take your kid on vacation or something. Even if you don't choose this path, it's better to have a passport for your children than not, because you just never know how things change globally in the world, and you might want to be able to leave with your children safely, without having to go through extra hoops and steps that could take months or even years to get, depending on your situation. Okay, so let me continue. Special circumstances. If one parent is deceased, unavailable, or legally barred from giving consent, additional documentation, such as a death certificate, sole custody order, or other relevant legal paperwork will be required. Okay. So this would be this particular, I'm going to take a little break. So this would be for like, okay, the other parent's deceased. Let's just say that you have kids, right? But it's not the child's other parent that is being a threat to you. They could be dead. They could be on drugs. They could be on the other side of the world and abandon you both. But the person who you're seeking asylum to get away from is like some other dude. Okay. Or your ex's in-laws, they're crazy and they want to get a piece of you and they're making threats and everything. This is where this piece, would come in handy, but you still need this person's signature, but you don't know where they are. Doing that is what will help you and save you. Okay. All right. Let me continue. If you face challenges obtaining consent from the other parent, consider the following approaches. Okay, so this is like, okay, you've asked nicely, could you sign off on our children getting a passport? This is what you do. All right. Negotiate during the divorce mediation. If you're going through a divorce, request that the other parent sign off on passport applications as part of the divorce agreement, as what I mentioned, explained about a few minutes ago. Seek a court order. You can petition the court to grant you sole custody with explicit rights to obtain passports for your children. If there's evidence of danger, abuse, or neglect, consult a lawyer to build a case focusing on the children's best interests. Alternatively, you can request a court order compelling the other parent to provide consent for passports. Work closely with an attorney to determine the best course of action and ensure your petition is properly prepared. Okay. And you can work with the lawyer to, you don't even have to go after sole custody. But yeah, you have that option B of just simply asking the court for it. And you and your lawyer could work together to make a sound reason for that. Okay. If you have immigrant parents or you have, relatives overseas, that's even better, or, your child, it could be as simple as your child going on an international school trip or something, or you want them to attend classes overseas for the summer, whatever. You can just get creative. Okay, so let me continue. Framing it as a family requirement. If you still have a cooperative relationship with the other parent, which is, probably unlikely if you're going to read this book. But again, maybe there's a third party that's a threat to you, not the other parent. Frame the passport request as necessary for family purposes, such as vacations, emergencies, or school trips. This may reduce resistance. Temporary guardianship. In rare cases, petitioning for temporary guardianship of your children through the court can give a trusted relative or friend the authority to assist with passport applications if the other parent is unavailable or poses a threat. This requires legal assistance and evidence of risk. So again, this is another alternative way to get to your bottom line of getting passports for your children if your situation is difficult. Okay. Step 3, locate a passport acceptance facility. Passports for first-time applicants, including children, must be applied for in person at an approved passport acceptance facility. These are typically located in post offices, some libraries, county clerk's offices, and certain government offices. You can search for the nearest location on the U.S. Department of State's website. Step 4, submit the application in person. At the passport acceptance facility, 1, bring all required documents, including the completed DS-11 forms, parental identification, proof of U.S. citizenship, and passport photos. Both parents should accompany children under the age of 16. Or, if only one parent is present, ensure to have your form of the DS-3053 from the absent parent. 3, pay the application fees, which typically include both a processing fee and acceptance fee. These fees can be paid via check, money order, or credit card, depending on the facility's payment policies. Step 5, consider expedited service to save time. Standard processing times for passports can vary, generally taking 8 to 11 weeks for regular processing. If you're on a time crunch, you can request expedited processing for an additional fee, which reduces processing time to approximately 5 to 7 weeks. Expedited services are available at passport acceptance facilities, and if you have imminent travel plans, you may be able to schedule an appointment at a regional passport agency to expedite further. Okay, step 6, monitor your application status. You can check the status of your passport application online through the U.S. Department of State's website. This allows you to track the progress and ensure there are no delays or issues. If you applied for expedited service, monitoring your application can help you manage timing for any necessary follow-up. Additional tips. Okay, now listen to this closely because this is important. Okay. Be aware of expiration requirements. Okay, some countries require passports to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your travel dates. Ensure your passport and your children's passports meet this requirement to avoid issues when boarding flights. And this is a biggie because for those of you who already have your passports, it's very easy to neglect the expiration date. Okay, especially when you have a lot of things going on and stuff. So if you do have your children's passport already, lucky you, it's good to take a look because there have been people, some of them famous in the news. I remember one celebrity in Costa Rica who was yelling at the airport and stuff because they were going to turn her and her kids back from her vacation there because her passport was due to expire in 3 months. Okay, so that's something that you do not want to happen to you or your kids, especially when you already have your plans lined up. Just so that there's nothing that's like the biggest snag ever that could just risk everything. So please pay attention to that. Okay, also this, children's passports expire sooner. Okay, passports for children under the age of 16 are valid for only 5 years, not the standard 10 years for adults. So plan ahead if you expect to travel frequently in the coming years, or any type of plans that you have that are international. Okay, and of course the reason why they make it every 5 years is because children change, they grow, their face change, most of them don't look anything like how they were 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and that's exactly why they have those standards. So please keep mind of that. Obtaining passports may feel daunting, but with preparation and attention to detail, you can complete the process efficiently. Each step you take brings you closer to the freedom and security you're working towards. Remember, the effort you invest now opens doors to a new chapter of safety, stability, adventure, and opportunity for you and your children. Keep your focus on the future you're building. This process is one of the first steps in creating a life filled with hope and possibility. All right, folks. So that's the excerpt. That's all of this in a nutshell. And hopefully you guys found a lot of value out of that. Let me see if we have any comments rolling. Pamela Jones, this is such wonderful information. Thank you, Pamela. I'm glad that you found some value in it. All right. So yes. All right. So this concludes my reading, Seeking Asylum in Costa Rica. And the book is available at my Stan store for $24.99. But for viewers watching this stream, you can get it at a discount for $19.99 when you order via my Cash app, Hadria D. And I can send it, I can email it to you directly. Okay. Even if you don't choose this path, I still consider it a very valuable work to read. And, you know, it's invaluable. Not only, I mean, even if you don't seek asylum, it's still a good read if you plan on relocating out of the country, especially in particular Costa Rica. And, you know, as I said, it's also useful for women who find themselves in like a stalker situation. It doesn't even have to be like a regular family drama. There are women who are just being accosted by people and the system's not helping them. And they're scared that they're going to, you know, end up being an NBC movie of the week, you know. So anyhow, guys, I hope you all found this to be you know, very helpful to you. Again, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out or ask in the comments. I'll be happy to help. So in the meantime, guys, I'm wishing you safety, happiness, and love. And remember, stay magical.